the language that always blames women. Welcome to Change the Conversation with the Hopefulist. My name is Wendy McClure, and it's time we had a conversation about living in a patriarchy and how that affects our lives. Together, we can make a difference and change the conversation. Woohoo! What do you think? Got me a new intro, some new music. I'm feeling it. We have officially made the change of the podcast name to Change the Conversation with the Hopefulist. If you've been listening to me for a while, I really hope that you like the changes that are being made, because this is something that's so important to me, so near and dear to my heart, this living in a patriarchy and how it has affected so many aspects of our life. So I do truly appreciate you being here, being open to this information that sometimes seems a little far-fetched. But when you break it down, you realize, wow, that has been going on all this time, and I had no idea, because we're not encouraged to examine these things. We're encouraged and conditioned to just go along, get along and go along. So I'm going to start out with a quote. Each time a woman stands up for herself, without knowing it, possibly without claiming it, she stands up for all women. I love that. I love that so much. So today we're going to talk about the language that has women always being blamed for so many things in our society. And I thought a great example of this would be the term single mothers. When you hear the term single mothers, there is an assumption that is made right away. And I know that's not the case for everybody, but I think in general, people assume either she's divorced, she was never married, she doesn't have a man in her life, that the father was just never around. There is all kinds of judgments that come to mind, and none of them are complimentary. When in essence, when there is a situation where a child has a single mother, what they actually have is an absent father. So instead of saying that Johnny has a single mom, why are we not saying Johnny has an absentee father? Why are we putting the onus of the judgment on the woman? See, this is all by design. This is what I've been talking about with all of these things being set up that we haven't even noticed in the past, that we are just automatically to blame for so many things just because of the wording that is used. Just like I had mentioned last week, why do we call sexual assault crimes against women? Why are we not calling it men's violence? Because 98% of sexual assault is committed by men. So why are we not calling it what it is? We're somehow, again, tying the woman, the victim, to the crime. We're tying the victim to the crime. She's the only one that's being pointed out in the conversation. Let's talk a little bit about when women get cheated on, or even the women that cheat with women's men. The term mistress. That's his mistress. What is the name for a man that cheats on his wife? I'm going to wait. What is it? Cheater, right? That's really probably the only thing you can come up with. If you come up with something different, let me know. But there is nothing that is equivalent to what a mistress is, because, a man or a woman can be a cheater, but when you're a mistress, that is one of those horrible women that is having an affair with somebody else's man. And I'm not saying that I think that it's okay to do that. I'm just saying, why are the women the only one that get a name that conjures up all of those feelings from the get-go? And it even goes back to how, women who are experienced, women who like to have some fun, may have, had a couple of partners. What are they called? They're called sluts. What is a man called that's had a couple of different partners? He's called a player. Yeah. So what is the difference between those two words? One is extremely shameful, and one is extremely complimentary. Huh. I wonder how that got that way. Let's talk about sexual assault trials. A lot of times, a sexual assault will not even be prosecuted because the woman does not want to go through it. First of all, she does not want to relive the incident. And I think part of the reason that they're so lenient on these crimes, again, because they have no idea how traumatic this is for a woman. They truly don't. And most of the people that have been in charge for the last forever until recently have been men. Men lawyers, men judges, men prosecutors. They don't think it's that big of a deal because it's never happened to them. And even if it did, it would probably be a little more emotional and traumatic for a woman, just for the fact that we look at that on a somewhat more personal level than a lot of men do. Again, not the case for everybody. But let's talk about when one of these cases do go to trial. The woman is typically on trial just as much as the accused. What were you wearing? What were you drinking? How were you talking? Were you flirting? I don't really care what you were doing, because unless you say okay, then it's not okay. But somehow we have given the impression in this society that not only is it not that big of a deal, that when something like this is prosecuted, the victim basically has to be the one to prove the other person's guilt because they themselves are on trial. I don't think I'm explaining this, exactly the way I'm hoping that it was coming out, but you get what I mean. In no other crimes is there a conversation about what you're wearing, what you're drinking, all of those types of things. What was the language that you were using? Why does this matter? Why does this matter? Why are men given the idea that if someone is leading them on, that they then have the right to violate that person? Are we instilling in men that they have no control over themselves whatsoever? They have no control at all. Because that's what that sounds like to me. If you're telling me that if you're at a bar with a woman who was flirting with you, and let's even say, you were doing a couple smooches here and there, when she leaves and you follow her out and she says, I'm just really I just want to go home now. Why does a man feel entitled to do what he wants regardless of what she said? Because men have been given the idea that they are entitled to what they want when they want. And when this does happen, there's not that much of a penalty to them. So it continues. The cycle continues. So we need to stop doing this to our women. We need to start making sure men are accountable for their actions. For their actions. I don't care how close you get to a sexual act. You have the power to stop at any time. Just ask any parent that had a kid walk in on them. I'm sure they stopped. But it's the impression that we give these men and the excuses, honestly, that we give these men that, well, how can you say that it was my fault? I mean, she led me on the whole night. I don't care. I don't care. So when a woman is sexually assaulted, and this is, again, what I don't think that men get, it's a matter of being completely and totally humiliated. It's a matter of not having any control. It's a matter of sometimes very real physical pain. It has an after effect of fear of walking alone anywhere, or even walking with people, walking in the dark. These are all things that are after effects of being sexually assaulted. And the worst part of it is the absolute worst violation that can ever happen to a woman. That is why often they go home and shower immediately. They feel like they need to get it off of them. And often then it's too late to go for a rape kit at the hospital. And, most people don't run to the hospital or to the police first. Some do, and I'm glad that they do. But I think that the first inclination is to do what is going to make you feel better immediately, and which is to get all of that filth off of you. So this is why we need women in leadership positions, because there are no harsh penalties for rape. I'm not saying there's not any penalties. I'm saying there's no harsh penalties. In fact, most of them are lenient because nobody has been in charge knowing how detrimental this is to women. So we need more judges. We need more lawyers. We need people who are going to be able to contribute to the conversation, to get people to understand what this actually does. This is the good thing about diversity and inclusion all around, because everybody comes at things with a different experience. And in this country, everything has been based on the white male. Everything. Do you know that women are hurt more in car accidents because the crash test dummies that they tested on were only in the form of a male? That women often get higher doses of medication than they should have, sometimes leads to problems because medical trials were done on men, not women. And they have in the last couple of years expanded it. But up until like 20 years ago, all medical trials were done on men and men alone. They're always constantly pointing out how our bodies are so different than theirs. Why would it never occur to somebody that we would need different types of medication or different doses of medication? Everybody has a different experience, and this is what different people bring to the table. So what we need to do is to have conversations with the men in our lives. And I don't think that they're going to do much about it. One, because they've got it pretty good. You know, they're not going to mess with something that favors them. Even if they don't see it that way, they're still not going to be inclined to do anything or to say anything. Because they don't want to speak up, because there is this unwritten rule, so to speak, that, you know, bros before hoes or what have you, especially if it's people that you don't really know. Like, it's a little bit of a different situation if it's somebody's daughter or somebody's mother, which reminds me of a story I saw not that long ago of a woman who was in a bar one night and a man had grabbed her butt. And she said he had done it twice. And after the second time, she started to freak out on him, asking him, "What are you doing? What makes you think that it's okay to do that to me?" It's like, "Oh, well, we're in a bar, you know, we're all hanging out, we're all having fun." She said he was with a group of maybe 6 or 7 guys. Not one. She said that they all the guys were kind of looking at her like, sorry, you know, like, and you think one of them even said, you know, he just gets like that when he drinks or whatever. So they're kind of making excuses for him, but not to him, not telling him, dude, knock it off. Because really, that's all you need to do. Dude, knock it off. It's wrong. So the kicker of this story is, as she's freaking out, the owner of the bar comes over and says, "What's going on here?" And the woman that had gotten groped says, "Yeah, Dad, this guy here was just groping me." And all of a sudden they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's the bar owner's daughter." And you know what they did? You know what the guy did then? He apologized to the bar owner. He apologized to her father, but still didn't apologize to her. What do you make of that? You think that's an example of a patriarchy? I sure do. I sure do. So we have to be the ones to change the conversation. Like I said, we can depend on our men, but I don't know how much we can depend on them. A lot of men just don't like to rock the boat. Instead of doing the right thing, it's just easier for them to stay quiet. But talk to them about their daughters. Talk to them about how this affects their daughters. And we all know, you know, the age-old, you know, meeting the new boyfriend at the door with the gun or whatever, because they were teenage boys and they know what teenage boys are like. And all of a sudden it's a problem now that they have a daughter. So these things aren't just going to stop unless we have these kind of conversations, point that out, and have everyone join the conversation to make it stop. We have to start bringing our boys up from the time that they are young and instill in them a sense of respect for girls and women. Stop disrespecting girls and women, like I talked about in the last episode, about how when you're saying, don't be like a girl, don't cry like a girl, don't run like a girl, that just makes them hate girls. That just makes them feel like humiliated because they're being compared to a girl, which of course means that they don't really want to be around girls. And that continues throughout life. But we have to be the ones. We have to be the ones to change the conversation. We can make things better for the future of all women, for generations to come. And this is not something that is going to happen overnight. This is going to take years and decades and generations, and changes have begun. But we still have a long, long way to go when it comes to living in a patriarchy, because I believe This is one of those things that is on the underbelly that nobody is talking about because we're encouraged not to, for one. But mostly, I think we just don't realize how much everything is skewed to men's favor because it has always been that way. And it will continue to be that way unless we call it out. So the good news is that we can go on with our lives now with this knowledge and now realize how much of this has impacted our life, how much it has impacted our marriage and our relationship with the other men in our lives, be it our siblings or our uncles or grandfathers. We now know that there has been this undercurrent of disrespect of women that is so deep down that a lot of times they don't even realize it themselves. They just act from it. So you've not been imagining it. You are not crazy. And this has affected your life in ways that I'm sure that you have never thought of. So if you have felt like you've been dismissed and belittled and like nobody is listening, that's likely been the case. So now that you have this knowledge, you can assess the people in your life and what's going on in your life and what changes you need to make in order to feel like the you've always been meant to be. And when I say that, what I mean is that all of these things have held us down. All of these things have put us into the sweet and nice girl box. And that's not the way we started. We started out being a little girl running around, saying what we wanted, doing what we wanted, not worrying about what people thought. And there was a freedom to that. And then parenting started and society got involved. And then you were told you have to act a certain way in certain situations. And all of this conditioning was brought upon you that made you suppress the real true you. But she's still there. She's still there waiting to be let out. And I hope that it's an awesome reunion when it finally happens. Again, something that does not happen overnight. But once you start tearing away all of the different layers of this patriarchy and how it has forced you to act in society, in your own marriage, in your home, in your relationship with your own sons, in the relationship with your own girls. Because we are all passing on the ways of the patriarchy because it's what we know. And that's why it's time to break the cycle. It is time to break the cycle. And I want you to do that by starting with yourself. I want you to realize who it is that is the true, authentic version of you. And I want you to live the life that will make it feel like you matter. Because I think that's what's wrong with so many women is they just feel like they don't matter. And that is absolutely the case in a lot of situations. So if you feel that way, it may be because that is the very case. So do an assessment. Try and figure out where you've been the victim of the patriarchy, what you can do to move forward, and how you can become your real, true self. I hope that you like this new format. I thank you for being here. I know that a lot of this stuff seems really crazy, and it's just because we've never considered it before. And once you start to think about it, it makes a whole lot of sense. So I cheer you and I applaud you for being here, to being open, to seeing things you've never seen before, considering things from a different angle, and for trying to better your life and the life of the women around you. So, even with all of my new stuff, I will still let you know that I want you to go on out there now. I want you to be badass, and I'm cheering for you. Thank you for joining me in this conversation. Together, we are better. Please visit my website at hopefulist.com and remember to hit that subscribe or follow button.